Good morning, everyone. Welcome and happy Monday to you. Unfortunately, Hurricane Melissa has done what many of us in the weather community have feared. She has strengthened and continues to strengthen into a very powerful Category 5 hurricane, and landfall is now expected in under 24 hours across the south coast of Jamaica. The storm will be hitting at a direct 90-degree angle, bringing the strongest impacts the island has ever felt from a hurricane. There's still some time for the storm to strengthen. She is strengthening right now, and aircraft are in there making measurements, watching the pressure drop even further. We're going to talk about what forecasts are showing, what we're observing in the storm, and then outside of Jamaica, who else will be impacted by the storm and where the storm track will go for the remainder of the week in this upcoming video. Thank you so much for joining me here. We're going to get right to it here. Let's talk about what's going on across the tropics. And you can see Melissa on the map. She looks almost like a smaller version of a super typhoon in the Pacific, a very compact eye, but a very powerful storm just to the south of Jamaica, drifting to the west. And unfortunately, it's not just Jamaica getting hit by this storm, but a lot of rain hitting the southwestern portion of Hispaniola, in particular, Haiti dealing with tremendous amounts of flooding. But Jamaica, unfortunately, has been dealing with the rain and the wind for the brunt of the storm over the last couple of days, and the worst of it is still yet to come, with that landfall expected here early in the day on Tuesday. Outside of that, the tropics are relatively quiet. We're heading towards November, which will close out the hurricane season. We don't have any other threats on the map. Strong wind shear over the eastern Atlantic is going to keep anything from developing there. The Gulf is quiet. We do have non-tropical lows tracking across the southern United States. More active weather expected here in the southeast. And some of these storms could produce some severe weather. We've seen localized flooding in Lake County, Florida, northwest of Orlando. Up to 15 inches of rain fell last night. So that will be very localized, but some areas could receive very heavy amounts of rain yet again today, and a second storm to follow. The good news about these storms, if there is any good news, I don't really want to call it good news, is that they are protecting the United States and the East Coast from any sort of hurricane strike at this point. The bad news is, of course, we are dealing with very unsettled weather. Here's the latest stats on Melissa. The pressure has dropped actually further down to 913 millibars, making this one of the strongest storms in recent memory and the strongest storm of this 2025 season. Not quite as strong as Milton last year, but getting close to that at this point. 16.4 degrees north and 78.0 degrees west. The storm has been moving slowly to the west with a few wobbles, and the winds estimated at 160 miles per hour. Hurricane hunters have been flying in and out of the storm. We saw a burst of strengthening that occurred during the overnight hours. They're still strengthening ongoing, and I will show you in a little bit that winds could actually be a little bit stronger than what the estimates are at this time. You can see in the last few frames here of the water vapor, the eye is actually shrinking and warming even more. You see the very bright brown color in the middle of the hurricane. I'm actually going to zoom in so you can see that, or try to, and you see the brown in the middle of the eye indicating that the eye is still warming, which is a classic sign that the storm is not finished strengthening. So the storm could actually get stronger, and keeping the safe enough distance to the south of Jamaica to allow that to happen. If the storm were closer to the island, the mountains would probably send some downsloping winds in from north to south, allowing the storm to weaken. But because the circulation is in an ideal spot of the southwestern and south central Caribbean, it's actually feeding in off of extremely warm water, and not just warm water at the surface of the sea, but warm water that extends thousands of meters well into the deep depths of the Caribbean Sea. So a very incredible setup here. Let me show you a zoomed in view here of the satellite. You can see there's no sign of let up here south of Jamaica as the storm continues to move to the west. It continues to just show us an incredible presence here of a force of nature. And additional thunderstorms firing up on the eastern side here indicate that the storm probably has more strengthening to do here during the day today. There will be some question marks as to if the strengthening trend is going to continue, if there will be a phase where maybe an eye wall replacement happens. These are very difficult to predict, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to do that with any sort of precision. But what I'm going to say here isn't really going to matter. If it gets 20 miles per hour stronger or weaker, it's still going to be a powerful storm that is going to cause widespread devastation to wherever it makes landfall. And if the eye wall does replace itself and a new one forms, it is likely going to bring a larger area of destruction, even though the winds near the center may end up being a little bit less. Usually what happens is when an eye wall replaces itself, what happens is a newer eye wall is bigger, the area of winds expands, and more folks actually see destruction from it. So that may not always be a good thing. Unfortunately, where this storm does make landfall, if that does not happen, then we are going to be talking a very serious situation. Let me make this smaller again so you all can see again. And this is, by the way, from cyclonicwx.com. I'm trying to move this over, but I guess we're running out of luck here. But just a closer view of seeing what's going on to the south of Jamaica, and not a massive storm. When this system does end up moving northward and gets north of Cuba and approaches Bermuda, it will actually probably double in size. It will be a weaker storm by then over the colder water, but it is certainly a very powerful one at this moment. Here's a look at the visible imagery now that the sun has arisen, and you see a stadium effect here that is very common in higher end hurricanes, with the winds just rotating in. And the storm has wobbled a little bit north and south. Yesterday, we noticed a bit of a south wobble, and some of the models actually had indicated that would happen. We are going to eventually see it turning, though, to the north and west in response to a trough that is building into Florida in the southeastern United States. That is going to change the steering up. And instead of this system continuing west, eventually it is going to get pulled around to the north and then yanked northeastward. And unfortunately, that yank does take it over Jamaica. There's really no way that the storm will avoid a landfall. At the very best case scenario, it makes landfall on the far western side of the island, but it still looks like an imminent landfall is going to happen. Here's a look at the radar from the Jamaican Weather Service or Meteorological Service. And you can see the eye is still very well defined. At this point, there is not a sign of an eye wall replacement. The eye wall is very well intact at this moment. You do see outer bands surrounding it, and still very heavy areas of rain affecting the eastern portion of the island. And what you don't see from this radar is that there are very high mountains that are about 3,000 meters up, which is 8,000 or so feet, maybe 9,000 feet. The Blue Islands or Blue Mountains on the eastern side of the island that are probably getting hit with incredible amounts of rain, which the radar can't pick up because of where it's situated. The beam height is actually too low to pick up on that rain, but you can see that very heavy rain is just crushing it. And what happens is that when that rain falls at these higher elevations, it has nowhere to go but downhill. So the villages at the base of the mountains and all the tributaries that flow downhill are going to fill up very fast. So flooding is a big concern. Mudslides are a big concern. And we're only going to see that get worse as the storm gets closer to the island tonight and certainly tomorrow morning. So we're just really getting into the beginning stages of this disaster. It's going to get worse as time wears on. Let me zoom back out here. Here's a look at the aircraft flight that went in at about 4:30 in the morning and gave us our Category 5 upgrade. It measured a pressure of 919 millibars. Typically, a Category 5 is around 920 to 925 or lower. The lower the pressure, the stronger the winds. And yesterday morning, it was measuring pressure in the low 950s. So between yesterday morning and this morning, the pressure dropped over 30 millibars, which technically is rapid intensification. Anytime you get that pressure to drop about 30 millibars or more in 24 hours, it is rapid intensification. So the rate of intensification has picked back up. It's almost as fast as where it was back on Saturday evening and Saturday night. And the pressure continues to drop. The latest measurement as of 7:25 Eastern Time, 9:16, aircraft have flown through again. You can see that the pressure being measured here actually about 913 millibars. So again, we're still seeing that pressure drop. And then dropsondes that were dropped into this system measured winds as high as 167 knots just above the surface. And that equates to 180 to 190 mile per hour winds very close to the ground. Flight level winds were not quite that high, so the Hurricane Center is a little conservative on keeping the winds at about 160 miles per hour. Satellite estimates coupled with this data makes me feel personally that the winds are probably higher than what they're coming out with, but officially it's 160 miles per hour. Now, you tell me the difference. If you're standing and someone hits you at 160 or 180 miles per hour, it's not much, but I think for statistics keeping, it does matter. So it's more than likely this storm is not just a category 5, but a higher end category 5, and certainly could still get there. I don't think 200 miles per hour, though. The people that were showing those scenarios a few days ago were probably embellishing on a situation here that's already very bad. So, anyway, those are my personal thoughts. But either way, the situation is very bad. The track continues to bring the system over the western half of Jamaica with landfall somewhere just before sunrise on Tuesday. And then the storm makes more of a right bend and brings it over southern Cuba, close to Santiago, perhaps as far east as Guantanamo. Early in the day on Wednesday, we have hurricane warnings, of course, for Jamaica and for all of eastern Cuba. We have tropical storm warnings for not just southwest Haiti, but now northwestern Haiti, as the storm could bring tropical storm force winds as it passes by Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. There's a small sliver that has a tropical storm warning just to the west of the track here across eastern Cuba. And now, as of this morning, those in the central and southeastern Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands are under a hurricane watch. And I expect this will get upgraded to a hurricane warning for at least those in the southeastern Bahamas and quite possibly in the Turks and Caicos. I don't think the central Bahamas at this point are likely to have a direct impact. But remember, I had mentioned that the storm is likely to grow in size, and an eye wall replacement cycle could certainly have that happen. But at this point, the storm should be a weaker system. It's going to pass over two different land masses, both of which have some higher mountains on them. So I can't imagine that the storm is going to be a stronger hurricane by the time it gets to these islands of the Bahamas. And in particular, we're looking at Crooked Island, Ackland's Island, Mayaguana, and maybe Great Inagua, at least the western end as well. Down the road, the Hurricane Center has us basically making landfall on or coming very close to the island of Bermuda early in the morning on Friday. And the track is shifting around a little bit, but I'll show you the models in a little bit that do show this storm a little bit more powerful than maybe what was originally being forecast. So Bermuda very much is in the thick of this storm. And I know Bermuda is hurricane resilient. We've already had some hurricanes threaten the island. We've even had Hurricane Imelda earlier on. But it is possible this storm could end up being a little bit stronger than those storms. Down the road, as we get towards the weekend, the beginning of November, it's likely going to be curving away from the East Coast. We could have some effects and certainly some dangerous surf up the eastern seaboard, in particular across New England and Atlantic Canada. But right now, a direct landfall is not expected. So looking at the key messages that the Hurricane Center has posted, they're very grim, of course, for Jamaica, a major catastrophe. Destructive winds. We're talking about a situation that is probably worse than what we saw with Helene in the United States, maybe as bad as what we saw with Hurricane Dorian back in the Bahamas in 2019. I would say maybe Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico Maria back in 2017, kind of a similar situation because we do have mountains involved, but also very powerful winds and high storm surge. A catastrophe in the making in Haiti and parts of the Dominican Republic due to the flooding. The winds are not going to be as much of an issue as the rainfall and the flooding in many of these areas. Tack on the fact that we do have deforested land in Haiti to keep that island running or keep that island nation running. And unfortunately, that is a big issue. Eastern Cuba, we do have some higher population centers banked up against mountains. That's obviously not a great situation either. We're looking at some potentially major flooding with rain falling all in a short amount of time. On top of that, some strong surge coming in from the south. And we're looking at some powerful winds as well hitting from the south. And for the Bahamas, I don't think this is going to be a destructive storm, but we are going to have high surge. We'll have some wind damage. We may have some flooding, but this storm is going to move through very quickly, unlike what we're seeing to the islands to the south of you. Here's a look at the wind field. And even though we've got an incredibly strong storm, it's not a massively large storm just yet. So hurricane force winds have stayed south of Jamaica. That will change overnight tonight as the storm curls around. We do have tropical storm force winds across the majority of the island. Those will eventually spread to the western side of the island later this evening. Haiti will eventually see more tropical storm force winds, and Cuba will start to feel those during the day tomorrow, probably by midday to early afternoon. Here is the surface wind estimate at this time. Again, we showed you the watches and warnings, but here's another view of them without the track on top of it. And then here's a look at the rain forecast, which continues to be staggering in how much rain we're talking. And I think maybe some of these numbers end up being a little on the low side. We say up to 40 inches more. That's on top of what's already fallen. High end rain maybe somebody gets 60 inches in Jamaica or 50 inches in Haiti. It's incredible. But you see that the highest rainfall isn't necessarily right where the track ends up being, but even east of the track and well north of the track, just due to the fact that this storm is moving extremely slowly, but fortunately will start to pick up some forward speed here in the coming days. The potential for hurricane force winds is extremely high across Jamaica. It's moderately high across Cuba. I do think these numbers need to be climbing, because the storm will certainly be a major hurricane as it approaches Cuba, and still a hurricane as it moves over Ackland's Island, or potentially over Crooked Island, or maybe the western side of Mayaguana, and possibly getting closer to Great Anagua if it takes the eastern side of this track. Decent chance for hurricane force winds on Bermuda. Prize, they only have a 10% chance. I would be going 40 at this point, but I would expect these chances to climb as well. The most likely time that we see winds increasing, well, they already have on Jamaica, but during the day on Tuesday across southern Cuba, and then during the afternoon and evening across the rest of western Haiti. The north side of Cuba, we're going to see those winds picking up towards the end of the day or evening on Tuesday. And then in the Turks and Caicos, the southeast Bahamas, winds will pick up Wednesday morning. And then as we get to Bermuda, those winds start picking up Thursday night. The worst will be overnight Thursday night and first thing on Friday. This should stay well east of Florida, well east of the higher population centers of the northwestern Bahamas at this point, and staying well to the east of the Cayman Islands and Cuba. We could have some locally windy conditions, but really that's about it. Here's a closer view of the forecast. The Hurricane Center, again, forecasting this gets to 165. I think it's a little conservative. There could be a period where it does weaken a little bit before it hits. Let's at least hope that that's the case. But regardless, I don't think we see it drop below Category 5 at this point. The official landfall point from the Hurricane Center does bring it over the southwestern portion of Jamaica, probably over St. Elizabeth or the western portion of Manchester. Still, there could be somewhat of a shift that brings it closer to Westmoreland. There's a chance it could come a little farther east towards Clarendon or maybe even St. Catherine. But right now, that official landfall point is just to the west of Alligator Pond, with the strongest winds likely to be just on the eastern side of that, pretty much right over Mandeville, Jamaica, and then eventually moving northward up towards parts of St. Anne and the northwestern side of Clarendon. And actually, the highest winds could be up on the mountains over the central part of the country. We're going to look at that landfall time, likely to be between about 5 and 8 a.m. And then the storm is leaving near Ocho Rios during the afternoon on Tuesday. It will weaken. It may briefly try to strengthen over this area here, but I don't think it's got a lot of time. What we do need to be watching is this landfall point late Tuesday night, early Wednesday. Right now, the Hurricane Center has it near Santiago de Cuba. That is the second largest city with 500,000 folks or more in Cuba. There are some very big islands here that will disturb the storm somewhat, but it will be moving a lot faster. And then right now, the expectation is that the storm tracks over Crooked and Ackland's Islands sometime Wednesday afternoon as a Category 2 storm. If it's stronger, we could still see it close to major hurricane strength, but I think that could end up being a bit of a stretch. We still could see this shift a little east, getting close to places like Matthewtown here on Great Anagua. We could see a shift still a little bit to the west that brings it a little bit closer towards the central Bahamas, but I think that is looking a little less likely at this time. And then farther down the road, we do see this track very close to Bermuda. Let me see if I can find that point for you all. There's Bermuda. In fact, that's awfully close to the western end of the island, literally about 50 miles west of Hamilton early on Friday morning, 2 a.m. Eastern, about 3 a.m. Bermuda time. And at this time, the storm is going to try to lose some tropical characteristics. It's tough to say if the strongest winds will be on the western or eastern side, but I would prepare for the worst if I were in Bermuda. The intensity forecast, again, this is we're already getting close to the peak of the storm, but it will weaken by the time we see landfall in less than 24 hours, and then it's downhill after that. You can see, though, interestingly, as this storm comes out of the Bahamas, there's still maybe a little bit of an idea of it trying to maybe strengthen a little bit. So it's not fully weakening after it leaves the Bahamas, or maybe a little bit of a window in here on Thursday where it tries to re-intensify just a touch. But overall, it should be weakening after that as it starts moving into colder water and wind shear picks up. And that area is going to be somewhere in here once it's halfway between the Bahamas and Bermuda. After that, it's curving away. Google DeepMind has done a great job with this storm, both intensity and overall track. It's not perfect, but you can see it no longer has a threat anywhere close to the United States. We have limited potential for this to try to maybe brush up against portions of Newfoundland or Cape Sable or Sable Island. But it's more than likely going to be getting closer to Bermuda and then recurving to the southeast of Canada at this point. And the grand ensemble has shifted a little bit here, but you can see coming very close to Bermuda over in here and then making a recurve out to sea after that. Looking at our hurricane models, these continue to waffle quite a bit. You will see the HAVS model has done pretty well on this. It's probably a little bit too weak, but it maintains that category 5 intensity. It actually strengthens the storm even more tonight, down to a minimum of 905.6 millibars by this time tomorrow morning by 5 a.m. So a higher end category 5 hurricane, 180 or 190 mile per hour hurricane, which is still possible and really frightening to think about. It does show the storm weakening a slight bit before it comes in, but still very powerful. And then weakening as it goes over Jamaica back down to category 3 or low end category 4. And then landfall near Santiago de Cuba. And then coming out of Cuba as a category 2 with landfall over Crooked and Acklands Island as a lower end category 2. And then strengthening again and getting much bigger. Take a look at this eye. It's ragged, but the storm is growing quite a bit as it gains latitude. And a lot of that has to do with some wind shear and the influence of a trough. And then it's got the eye basically going right over the eastern side of Bermuda, but the strongest winds to the south and east. This could still shift, but something that we need to be watching. I'll try to speed up the rest of the video here. I don't want to take up too much time, but here's a look at that HAVS model again, showing the forecast radar, showing this turn, very sharp turn to the northeast. And landfall looks like it's going to be basically right over St. Elizabeth. And the time that the model has that landfall occurring actually isn't until about 11 a.m. local time. So there's a chance that Bend could be a little farther out before it comes back in. But I would be prepared for that landfall as soon as sunrise in Jamaica. Then the storm still holding its act together here. And then we start to finally see some bit of an eye wall disruption here Tuesday night as this moves into Cuba. But then the storm may have kind of a second wind after it passes the Bahamas and starts to interact with the trough here. It actually gives it a bit of a boost before it gets closer to Bermuda here. And let me reload this for you all to be able to see. And you can see it's quite possible that Bermuda ends up in the eye wall early in the day on Friday, depending on which model you like at this point. Looking at the wind potential, these are the highest gusts. And again, this model is coming in very hot on winds. Let me make this a bit smaller so you can follow the numbers. But you see it showing wind gusts of about 182 miles per hour or so this afternoon, and remaining in the 180s and then climbing into the 190s. And it even has gusts that are over 200 miles per hour off the coast, and then coming down a bit into the 180s and 190s, and then substantially weakening. So where this eye does come on shore, assuming that the storm continues to strengthen, which it very well looks like it is, we do have the potential to see some extreme amounts of wind, not just high-end category 4, but well into the category 5 range where this comes on shore. And that is going to destroy buildings like we've seen in storms like Dorian and Maria for sure. So a very bad situation, regardless of how you look at it. Coming into Cuba, we do have the wind potential to see 120 mile per hour wind gusts, depending on how strong the storm gets now. It will be losing some of its steam, but it will still have some incredible winds. So if you're in southeastern Cuba, this also has the potential to knock power out and cause major infrastructure issues that could take months to repair. It's not just Jamaica we're worried about, but Cuba for sure. Beyond that, we're talking about significant winds as this blows through the Bahamas. I don't think the impacts will be quite as rough, but you see the wind field does grow substantially as we get to the middle and second part of this week. And then as the storm is approaching the Bermuda chain here, or Bermuda area. Interestingly, it's forecasting 8 mile per hour winds as the eye goes right over Bermuda. But if that shifts, we could be looking at 130 mile per hour wind gusts. See that 129 down here? If this shifts 50 miles west, that 129 is hitting Bermuda. So again, this is probably going to shift. It usually does. So if you're in Bermuda, I would be inclined to go be prepared for the worst here. And if it ends up being a lot less, then I would be okay with that. But I would be prepared for the worst at this. All right, looking further down the road here, after our storm exits, of course, we have the big storm on the East Coast, maybe some rough weather, maybe even a little severe weather in the Carolinas, and then big rains for the mid-Atlantic on Thursday. But that storm is going to push this offshore. We've got a frontal boundary that is going to hang out here over the weekend near the southeast Bahamas, near Cuba, and over the southwestern Caribbean. And that front sticks around next week as well. I'd love to say it's gone, but unfortunately, as we're trying to clean up from these storms, we have more rain to be dealing with, and some of it could be quite heavy. Models are not strong on a signal for more development, but anytime a front hangs out down here, we do need to be watching. So I'm not saying at this point we're going to have another named storm, but there is a weak signal that could certainly still be possible. But more importantly, we're going to see a lot more rain down in places like Jamaica and also in Cuba, the Cayman Islands, and certainly in Central America. And flooding will be a threat, especially on top of the rain that we're already seeing now. The GFS model also indicates that there's going to be a lot of rain down here over the weekend. Haiti, Jamaica, Cuba, several more inches of rain through this weekend. And then that front hopefully gets pushed westward. The GFS does get aggressive here, tries to develop a tropical system, but again, it's pulling it towards Central America and away from Jamaica and Cuba. And let's hope that's the case. Not that we hope a storm on anybody, but the last place we want to see it is in the same place as where we had it here. If you take a look at our ensembles, you see we are going to see a very wet period over the Western Caribbean next week. That includes the Cayman Islands, that includes Honduras, maybe Belize and Guatemala, Eastern Nicaragua and Costa Rica. It could still be quite wet across Cuba, across Jamaica. Hopefully not Haiti, though, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. If this boundary shifts, though, a little bit farther south and east, which is possible, then all of this rain here ends up 100 miles, 200 miles east, then we have a much bigger issue. We've got just adding salt to the wound. So something to keep in mind. And right now, not a strong signal for anything new to develop to impact those countries, but we do have a couple of ensemble members that do try to spin something up once we get to between the 6th and the 10th or so of November. Climatology typically favors something moving west towards Central America at that point, but just keep an eye on it at this point. Nothing really more than that. If you look at the Google DeepMind, it says it's more than likely if anything does try to form, it would be heading in the direction of Central America, possibly Cuba, the Yucatan, or the Caymans, but unlikely Jamaica or Haiti at that point. So I will wrap up here this video with some words of encouragement. I am a Christian. I give all the honor and glory to God, and I truly believe that Jesus Christ is our Savior, and there is salvation through him and no one else. Acts 4:12 says, and there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. And I've been praying, members of my church community have been praying for folks that are in the storm zones. I can't imagine how difficult it must be. I've some of my family members have been through storms. I've had some brush ups with tropical systems, but never had to leave my home for an extended period of time. And all I can say is it's extremely discouraging, but our time here on earth is limited. Our treasures here on earth are limited. What really matters is what happens when our time is done. And we have the opportunity to then spend our eternity in heaven with Jesus, because he is Lord. He is our Savior, and he has come to bear our sins so that we are given the gift of eternal life through him. And that is true salvation. The only way you're ever going to be saved from the storms in your life, from hurricanes, from natural disasters, from health, from other factors that maybe you have no control over, is through eternal salvation. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He is eternal life. He's coming again. And I really hope that you've made a decision to follow him and trust in him and to have some faith. I'm here to encourage you in prayer. If you are struggling in your faith, just know that you're welcome here no matter what you truly believe. But I firsthand have seen some folks struggle with their faith, but one event or something else has completely changed it. I truly believe that that's God's work. It's not something that internally you can even try to do. That is truly God's work. All you have to do is just step back and trust in him. So I thank you for joining me here on this Monday morning. I will plan to be back on towards my usual time. And do me a favor, if you haven't yet become a subscriber, I urge you to subscribe. That way you're going to be able to see that next video and any updates I have throughout the day. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great week. We'll be back.